And good evening and welcome to Lift FM 98.5 and 97.9 on your FM dial. And of course, as always, you can listen to us on the World Wide Web at liftfm.com. It is Tuesday evening, and this is our program entitled Second Chances. And you say to yourself, what is a second chance? Well, here's what a second chance is. If you've accepted the Lord Jesus Christ into your life and have confessed Him, that He is your Lord of your life, then that is a second chance. Of course, like it says in the Bible, how many times are you to be forgiven? 70 times 7 is what the Bible says. So is that right, Chad?
In one day.
Okay, in one day. So that means we've had many more than second chances in all of our lives, that's for sure. But if you say, well, I don't know the Lord, and this program is just for the believers, wrong. This program is exactly for you. And this program is really, we put this program on so we can bring people on from all walks of life. And chances are the guest that we have some night is going to speak directly to your situation. So that's why we do this program. And we have a wonderful guest with us tonight. And we're going to introduce you to him. His name is Chad Losaw. Chad is a wonderful Christian and a guy that is very active in a lot of things. And we'll talk about those things in this program. But Chad, start off and just tell us where you're from. We'll just ask little short questions. So where are you from, Chad?
Okay, I'm from a little town called Fairton, New Jersey, in South Jersey.
Okay. Born and raised in Fairton, right?
Born and raised in Fairton.
Okay. Now, your family. Your family Christians? Did you come from a home where your dad and your mom were both Christians? Were they both together at the time?
How I was raised was pretty much a split home.
When you
My
say go ahead.
stepdad came in my life when I was 2.5 years old and has been there ever since. My father's an awesome man, but we learn from other people's mistakes and we move on. And the Lord has really protected me in that situation.
So really, neither one of them were really Christians? Mom or your father?
No.
Okay.
I would say they definitely believe, but have they turned their life over to the Lord? I would say no.
Okay. So now what I know about Chad is that as far as I know, you spent a lot of your life in the church, in the church school. Is that correct?
That's correct. K through 12, I went to a private Christian school.
Fairton Christian Center Academy.
Fairton Christian Center Academy.
Okay. Now, obvious first question. Your mom and dad are not necessarily, they're not together, and neither one of them are real devout Christians. How did you end up in Fairton Christian Center Academy?
Well,
that's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very good question. My mom was attending church there, and she does periodically from time to time. But at that time, she was attending, and my great-grandmother was a member of the church, and she was going with her. And my brother, who's 6 years older than me, started going to the school there also. And then when I was born, she decided when I became a kindergartner and when it was time to start school that it would be Fairton Christian Center. And some years was really tough financially. One time my mom paid with just loose change that she saved up through the year for tuition. And that was fun counting all them for, over the summer. Mm-hmm. But, my mom is an amazing person. One of the hardest working people I ever know. And I just
now it's interesting. It's interesting. You mentioned your mom did whatever she had to by basically scraping the change or whatever to pay that tuition. Now, you and I go to the same church, so that's kind of how I know you. And of course, we share the same birthday. We're both St. Patrick's babies, March 17th. Although I don't think your year of being born was 1968. I think that was a different year, but I might be wrong about that. But all kidding aside, this past Sunday, it's interesting you say that because we had a speaker at our church, and he used this analogy. We just said it off the air a moment ago about, give me the analogy. I always want to get it messed up. Go ahead.
Okay, basically the analogy is this. The Lord asks us to start weaving, and He will provide the thread.
In other words,
acting in faith, and then through acting in faith, He will keep on providing it for you one step at a time, just keeping one step ahead of you.
And obviously that happened because you went to the academy all the way through. So your mom started the weave, and you've been threading ever since.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
she did.
Now, um, earliest memories, obviously, I'm sure you can't remember too much about kindergarten, first, second, third grade, but I would suspect probably about fifth, sixth grade, you probably began to remember a lot of things. Uh, Early memories, do you remember that day, maybe when you were young or whatever, that you said, you know what? I want to accept Jesus into my heart. And I'm not just going to say it because, they're praying it with me at school or at church, but I really want him to come into my heart. Do you remember that day, Chad?
I do remember that day. It was during it was during a church program that our church has through the Assemblies of God, which was Royal Rangers, and it was actually one of my first weeks going there. I believe I was 5 years old,
Mm.
which I remember, and I still remember the commander who introduced this. He pretty much put it out there to, if you want to know Jesus as your Lord and Savior. Well, I had no clue what that meant, but he began describing it. He began telling us who Jesus was, what he did for us, and I remember just saying, feeling incredibly saddened over that. Something I know that I needed, something I knew I just needed to do. It was just this gut-wrenching feeling that I knew that I had to do it. I remember just being upset, physically crying. I was 5 years old, knowing that I need to do this. And I was so scared that it made me upset,
Mm-hmm.
and I did it. And from that moment on, bumps in the road, many second chances. Here I am.
Now, a couple things. Royal Rangers. People are saying, "Well, what's a Royal Ranger?" I would always best describe it, and of course, I've never been involved, but I would describe it as the Assemblies of God version of the Boy Scouts.
Correct.
Is that really
That's
what it is?
exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. You earn all kinds of talents and skills, just as a Boy Scout would. Camping, um, everything that a Boy Scout ever did, we do.
The other thing that I know that is very important, that is not only just that type of teaching, but you're also, really the ranger commanders are almost like father figures to a lot of the people. They're role models, some cases father figures, but they also teach you about the word, don't they, Chad? And prayers involved in it. It's not just, how to make a campsite. Of course, I was never good at any of this stuff. So, but talk to us about that.
But basically, what it is exactly that. They are father figures, but I guess maybe the better analogy would be just a Christian example of
Mm.
how to be a godly man for these boys. For instance, some boys I remember, like myself, came from broken homes or split homes or no father at all, or parents who were married. And even so, they gained respect for these men. Um, I remember seeing a time where the boys didn't respect them at all, and then towards the end of the year, they were very respectful. They fall in line when they were told to fall in line, and they began to apply the principles that we were being taught, and you see changes. And we go in powwows or whatever. There was all kinds of opportunity to get to know the Lord in a deeper way, to actually have a one-on-one relationship with Him. And I've seen boys changed.
You were 5 years old when you decided to make that commitment because of what a commander said, correct?
Absolutely.
Was once you made that commitment into your life, do you remember any things that changed over the next several years? I know you were kind of young at the time. Do you remember anything that kind of changed, or maybe you started talking to people about Jesus, things like that?
Yeah. From the age 5 to 13, I struggled with uh, asking people to forgive me for something, because then I had to put it out there that I did something wrong against them. And I would always ask the Lord to forgive me, but I was like, Lord, I just pray, please don't embarrass me and I'd have to embarrass myself. And it was pride that I was dealing with, that I had to go before this person and say, listen, I made a mistake, I messed up, or I said this about you, or I did this, can you forgive me? And that I was really scared of that.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, just dealing with that, and eventually just one day just doing it, and just doing it, and just the peace that you got from that guilt that you had just being released, forgiven, um, was something that he did in my life. And when I remember when I was about 13 years old, I was kind of far away from the Lord. And
How did that happen? I mean, you were in a Christian school and were around it all the time. How did you kind of drift, Chad? Remember?
well, I don't remember everything of all the reasons why it happened, but I was hanging around the wrong people. My relationship with other people and uh, things I was involved in was more important than my relationship with the Lord. And that's exactly what it is. It's a relationship. It's not just a one-way street. Um, just like any other conversation, for it to be interesting, for it to be anything, it has to be two-way. So it takes time, thought, and effort. And that's how I believe your relationship with the Lord works.
Hmm.
And when I was 13 years old, I realized I wasn't doing that. And I remember from Royal Rangers, one of the first scriptures I ever learned was John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And that's something I took pride in when I was little. And I remember just being alone in my room and just really depressed, and just this thought coming upon me saying, do you remember that scripture? And I couldn't remember it. And then at that point I knew that I've separated myself from the Lord. And that's when I would say it was a second chance. I turned around.
Mm.
And from that moment on, I started to realize, you know, I need to talk more and less keeping him inside just for me. It's not just about me. It's about him. And just moving on from there, and from that moment on, I mean, the Lord has given me small little opportunities to talk to people or whatever, and it's whether I took advantage of it or not.
Do you have some of your first memories of talking to people? Can you remember any of those after the Lord started giving you those opportunities? Remember some of the first ones you did? Classmate, friend?
Particular, that's tough. I remember the first person I ever talked to.
Or some of the first ones. They could be anybody early on.
Yeah. there, there was one particular time a friend of the family, he was older, Vietnam vet, and he started just talking about whether he believed in God or not, or heaven, or what he felt like he was going to say to God when he got there, especially after things he saw. And I don't think I knew I got him thinking, but I don't necessarily believe that he accepted Christ. I don't know that to this day. I can't judge him, but I do remember just having the courage and just saying, "Hey, I got to say something. I just can't leave him feeling like this," because he was getting to the point of being really sad and over this. And you know, anybody that goes through war or whatever, it's a difficult thing to handle.
Can you relate to this, Chad? It almost seems like when the Lord gives you something to do, and you do it, something else follows. So did you find after you started telling first person about the Lord and how you spoke to him, did you find that the Lord started sending this one in front of you and that one in front of you and just kind of seeing how you do? Did you ever notice that it kind of increased?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you get opportunities all the time. Sometimes, I mean, you could spend your whole day doing it, to be honest.
The Lord gives you these opportunities, and of course, you just never know, the fruit of those opportunities. You may speak to this person, and you have no idea what became like that guy. You just said you have no idea.
Right.
But then there's other people you've seen the fruit of your work, and it's always nice to see when the Lord has changed someone. One of the things I know that is obviously happened in your life is the Lord has given you numerous that I'm aware of, and I didn't. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about, I really don't know ahead of time. A lot of times, our guests on this program, we don't know that, but there are a couple of obvious things that I know that the Lord has given you some ministry opportunities. Let's see if I can remember a couple of them. Let's see. One time there was the Handbell Choir. That's a ministry. Of course, that was through the school, and I think you even were involved after you got out of the academy, right?
That's correct.
Let's talk about that one. We'll go through them a little by little here. Tell us about that ministry. That's I think that's a great ministry.
Handbell Choir basically was activity or an academic that you could do through the school. It'd be just like basketball, baseball, but it was a band thing, like a jazz band that would have a public school or the marching band. Our school had a handbell choir, and what we would do we would perform um, sometimes 12 times a year, once a month. There was a few times where we went away on like to Virginia and
Was
for
that
two
convention?
weeks.
Was that convention?
This was not convention. Was a separate, just to go to minister and to
Oh,
be a part of a particular church's youth group and to get to minister to them. And we were all the same age, and it was a lot of good times, a lot of traveling, and it was just a fun time and something I've always cherished that the Lord has did.
was that the first time you actually got into music with the handbell choir, or had you had a love for music prior to that?
I started playing the piano when I was 7 years old, through lessons, and it kind of grew from there.
So is that a great part of that analogy that you start the weave and the Lord will sew the thread?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us how your music has progressed. Tell
Well,
us how you went from here to the.
okay, I started playing the piano when I was 7 years old, and funny actually, it started started when I was younger. Not lessons, but one talking about my mom being a hard worker. She worked shift work in a glass factory, and she one time had made a verbal agreement with the school that she couldn't make payments. It was money was really tight, and she offered to do janitorial work at the school for free in order to offset the payments. And so after school, I'd be there helping clean up the school. 7 years old, 5 years old, and I remember sitting at the piano. That's still to this day in our front foyer, and just banging away, making no sense out of it. And it kind of grew from there. And my mom saw something that, maybe he should start taking piano lessons. And then years went by and things got better, and moved into the house and that my mom built herself, and started taking piano lessons and had opportunities to play for people. Was starting writing little music here and there, little songs, and got a chance to play for a few people, a few bands, and then keyboard wise, and then handbell choir came along, and it was a way to get out of class, so I did it. I didn't necessarily look at the music aspect, and then it came to be about the music, and then about the ministry, and from the ministry it moved on to other opportunities of ministry through music, to where I started playing praise and worship in the band with
How
the
did
youth group.
the bass come into play?
The bass came into play. Well, playing the bass guitar, I was playing keyboard slash acoustic guitar here and there for the youth group, and the bass player we had eventually couldn't make it anymore. So um, a guy that was on Second Chance earlier this year, Mike Coyle, was the leader of the praise team, and said, "Hey, I want you to get my bass out of the big church and just try it, to see what you could do." And from there, he month or two later, from me doing that, he gave me a bass. Just
Wow.
gave me a bass, and he said, "I want you to learn this inside and out." And that's what I started to do, and still playing the piano. And a few months later, the praise and worship leader from the big church came over and said, "I heard you playing the bass." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "How about you play for us?" And I said, "What?" And he says, "That's not an answer." He says, "What's your answer? Would you do it?" And I said, "I guess." And he said, "That's still not an answer. Yes or no?" And he was joking aside. He just caught me off guard. And of course, I wanted to do it because, to be honest, when I was little, I looked up to this man. This is someone who I saw every Sunday uh, playing his heart out for the Lord. And I said, that's something I want to do.
Mm.
That is, and I looked up to him because I knew he was sincere. and that's something that meant a lot to me. And he played the piano, and that's something that I had much interest in. And so from there, I've been in the praise band going on 5 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you get in the praise band, and that's one of the ministries you're in. Another ministry that you're in, you're involved with the youth group.
I am involved with the youth group, and that's also on the music side. There is occasions where I do speak to the youth group, but for the most part, I do the praise and worship.
Now you
For
do
the youth group.
you do, not to interrupt, but you do realize that usually if there's an area that you're not the most comfortable, the Lord begins to put you into those areas. You realize that, right?
Oh, absolutely, and he
And
has.
speaking is one of them. I know.
He
I know you're
has.
not crazy about speaking, but
I'm not crazy about speaking, but he is definitely. There's been times I've had to speak, and I do it because I feel that that's what he's saying. Do it.
Mhm.
Take the step.
So the more you admit that there's an area, or the more the Lord knows that it's an area that you know you're not the most comfortable. He's gonna begin to put you there.
He stretches you.
Yeah, he does. He does, but that's okay. It's called growth.
It's a good thing.
So, any experiences since you've been involved with the youth group? I know you were asked by the leader, right, Garnet Glenning, to be there and be a part of it. Is that correct?
Correct. Experiences.
You've seen any lives changed? You've been able to encourage somebody?
Well, it's definitely an encouragement for me, because it's praise and worship is just a very intimate time with the Lord, and getting to see the youth group catching that, seeing that, and that flame in them to start to grow and to realize that's exactly what it's about. It's about worship, and to see it from all aspects of praise and worship. It's not necessarily just about music. It's about how you live your life,
Mm-hmm.
and they get to see that too, and to see them start to do that, to see them start to praise and worship. That's an exciting thing. That's worth living for. That's something worth doing.
And I don't know for sure, but I would imagine you could probably answer this more than I. But the impression that is made in youth group could be the difference between them staying on the right road and them going off to the wrong road. Is that correct, Chad?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. How much effort you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. You can gain friends for a lifetime through youth group, and that could be the person at the right time, at the right moment, who can get you out of trouble, keep you out of trouble, instead of getting involved with the wrong crowd.
Actually, let's get to the other area of ministry that I know you're involved in. I guess it was back in February that our church, Ferreton Christian Center, began to do the television, to put it on broadcast TV. And I can remember early on that we decided that we were going to start putting the phone number up on the screen for people to call for prayer. What none of us thought about, even those of us who are planners and organizers and try to think of everything, is that we didn't realize that the Lord was going to draw people to the program like He did, and B, we never thought, well, gee, the phone system at the church is automated. So I remember we get the phone system not being automated, but shortly thereafter we realized that we need several people to answer the phone. So the Lord starts using Chad. Talk to us about that, because that's speaking once again. It may be one-on-one, but you're speaking.
Yeah, it's
talk to us about that, Chad.
That's still definitely a stretching opportunity, in character, and how far you step out and letting the Lord speak for you through you. Answering the phones on Thursday night through people calling through prayer or whatever encouragement, it's been a big blessing. It's at first I said, I don't know about this. I didn't necessarily know if the Lord was going to use me through this, or just was a one-time thing, or every now and then. But he's really showed up at certain times during that. People call in for all kinds of things, just for prayer in general, for health, for encouragement, for family members. I mean, you think you've heard it all, and then some people call in and they shock you with a story or whatever that just sharing their life with you and what they're struggling with, and then you realize, okay, Lord, how am I going to tackle this one in prayer? And you yourself have to step out in faith with that person, and it's a big encouragement to just believe with them, and it's a blessing to just see them, just to see peace and joy come over them through their voice. You can just tell, you can hear the change, and God's an awesome God. He does amazing things.
I realized early on that the Lord wanted to use that program for salvation, because that's what that program's all about. And I know we've had people saved because of the program. Have you been blessed to be one of the people to pray with someone to lead them to the Lord as you've talked to them on the phone? Have you had any of those calls?
Yes, I have. There have been several who've called in for a second chance, who rededicated their life to the Lord. And if you have not done that, I encourage you to do it. But also there are people who've called in for the first time, just realizing I need this change in my life. And I have had the opportunity to pray with several people.
Mm-hmm. Any other ministries, Chad, that you're involved in or have been that I did not mention?
Not that I could think off the top of my head. He's just providing a way for me to go and opening doors, and I hope that I see them to go through them.
Now, one of the things that I know that you really, really are very faithful to do is to once you get committed, you seem to be a very faithful person. Have you had the ability, Chad, to witness to family members over the years, like your mom? Has she ever accepted the Lord, or have you been able to witness to her more, or maybe your brother, or different family members? I'm not sure. Any memories of that recent years as you've grown stronger in the Lord?
Yeah, there are several family members who I believe who have accepted Christ. Like I said, it's a lifestyle. It's more of a lifestyle. It's just the way you live,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about each morning waking up and realizing this is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice in it, and He is my Lord. And making that statement every day, casting down the old man every day,
Mm-hmm.
and just walking in the Lord every day, acknowledging that. And sometimes people get caught out of that. They get caught up in life or whatever, and they just start walking away, and it becomes a difficult situation. It's not that they don't believe. It's not they don't believe that Jesus didn't do what He did, or anything of that nature. It's just how they present themselves before the Lord, how committed they are. And I believe that is, I've not had the chance to physically talk to them about it, because for them, some it's a touchy subject, because there's guilt there. They're just struggling with it, and they get defensive.
Mm.
So for me, it's about just being an example, just living every day for the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully they see that.
Well, I have to tell you, Chad, it has been a pleasure, and I know you probably were very skeptical when I said we're going to be on with me for a half hour. Greg, what am I going to talk about for a half hour? Well, guess what, Chad? Our time is just about over. So, told you we'd have no trouble talking about the situation. But our guest tonight here on Second Chances has been Chad Losaw. Chad is a young man, so to speak, a young Christian man, and has a wonderful testimony, is very dedicated to the Lord, and is a great role model, especially for the younger kids that see a guy that's been raised in the church, and good example of what a godly man should be. So we want to thank Chad for his willingness to stretch it and come on and talk with us here on Second Chances here on Lift FM, 98.5 and 97.9 on the FM dial. By the way, if you can never be near the radio on a particular Tuesday, don't forget, we are worldwide on the World Wide Web at liftfm.com. Once again, liftfm.com, where you can catch Second Chances right here Tuesday evenings at 9 o'clock on Lift FM.